Dave Ramsey's baby steps are a great way for us to take control of our finances, especially as gold and silver investors. Hey everyone, Tactical Timmy here. I wanted to talk about Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps, especially as they relate to gold and silver investors, and some of my critiques of Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps because they're not something that I completely agree with wholeheartedly. And as we go through these baby steps, I'll give you some of my insights that I've gained as I've become an investor over the years. So let's start off with baby step number 1, and this is one that I completely agree with, and it is saving up your first $1,000 for a starter emergency fund. This is something that can allow you to actually be prepared to take on all of life's little challenges, where it's your car breaks down or the washer and dryer is broken or the dishwasher is not working, all these little things that become a problem and might end up causing you to actually have to go into like credit card debt. It's something that can be taken care of a lot of times with simply having that $1,000 emergency fund. So that first baby step I am in full agreement with, of having that $1,000 emergency fund as the first thing you do when taking control of your finances. Now, number 2, he says to actually go directly into paying off all your debts except for your house. And I tend to agree with this. The only thing that I would say is if you're in a family and you actually have credit card debts and you have other finances, I think that it might actually behoove you to actually maybe rearrange steps 1 and 3 and actually have a little bit more of an emergency fund before you start aggressively paying down your debts, because that's something that you don't want to have to go into credit card debt for, say, a $1,500 expense, if that's something that you can actually have on an emergency fund. And that's something that I would say you might want to reorder the steps and actually wait to pay off some of your debts until you have a little bit more of a fully flushed out emergency fund, which is that step number 3. We already kind of jumped ahead of the gun there and talked about how having a 3 to 6 month emergency fund and having that fully funded is something that's really, really important. Now, having that full 3 to 6 months is where you really start to get that peace of mind, knowing that if I lost my job, if anything happened in the future, I would be okay for those 3 to 6 months. We can all make sure that we can go out and somehow make the ends meet if we have a little bit of time to do it. But oftentimes we do need the time to go out and make things happen, like go out and find a job. It's much easier to go out and find a job in 3 to 6 months as opposed to having to find a job next week. Now, that 3 to 6 months of expenses, that's going to vary household to household. Obviously, if you live in states where you have a lower cost of living, you're not going to have quite as much of a need for an emergency fund, as opposed to if you lived in like New York or California, where obviously you would need a higher emergency fund because your cost of living is more. It just costs more to live in California as opposed to living in smaller, more rural states. Now, this is going to be also where I start to deviate from Dave Ramsey's, because Dave Ramsey, as you all are probably well aware, he laughs at gold and silver investing, and I think that there's certainly a lot of value in investing in gold and silver because it really does a great job of providing a lot of that peace of mind that the emergency fund does, because that's something that with our finances, it causes a lot of stress in our lives. And as we move past this step number 3 and we move on to step 4, which is investing 15% of your household income into your retirement, I think that that's where we need to make sure that we have that peace of mind so that we're not tempted to go out and raid our retirement funds. And the best way I've found to have that peace of mind is to actually have some gold and silver invested, because we know that that's not going anywhere and we're always going to have that backup and that emergency fund, not only in cash of 3 to 6 months of expenses, but also have that emergency fund of gold and silver that we can actually draw on in a time of need. I think that that's something that's really important in making sure that we don't touch our retirement savings and our 401k or IRA balances, actually allowing us to have those things grow over time. I also disagree with some of Dave Ramsey's investment advice when it comes to retirement expenses. He tends to preach actively managed mutual funds, and there's tends to be a conflict of interest that he is a part of there. And I know this is going to ruffle some Dave Ramsey absolutist feathers, because he has a conflict of interest because he supports actively managed mutual funds, and guess where he makes some money? From actively managed mutual funds that do have the higher fees. A lot of times, and when you look at most mutual funds, they end up not ending up beating the index that they are tracking. And index funds tend to end up being better investments than a lot of mutual funds. And it's hard to pick a good mutual fund year after year after year. And when we're talking about these mutual funds that perform better than the market year after year and over the course of 30 years, that's something that is really, really difficult to do. And it's hard to pick managers that are going to continue that performance over the course of their entire working career and compare and beat the actual market. And that's, again, one of the reasons that we should have that side hedge of gold and silver, because, we don't have to shoot for the moon and shoot for the stars if we know that with our stock portfolio, if we know that we have our gold and silver in reserve in case anything goes wrong. Now, going on to baby step number 5, that's going to be saving for our children's college fund. And I tend to agree a lot of the things there. There's options of, going and using tax advantage savings for college funds. You can also, I plan on passing down some of my gold and silver to my children, and maybe they'll choose to use that for specific education or trade schools or whatever they need to in the future. Also, starting businesses, I think, would probably be a fantastic use. I would be so happy if I passed along a gold or silver coin to my kids and they use that to go out and buy capital to start a business and start their career in a business. I would be incredibly happy for them to go out and do that. Baby step number 6, I'm on full board with. If you are already investing in your retirement savings, you've got a good safety net of gold and silver invested. You've got your baby step 3 and you've got your fully funded emergency fund, paying off your home early, and baby step 6 is something that would be fantastic. We've talked about how you don't actually own your home until it's completely paid off. The bank actually holds the deed until you get it paid off, and that's something that a lot of people kind of forget. They think about home ownership being this something that we should all jump to and all be a part of really, really soon, but we're actually not owning the home until we get it completely paid off. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. So we have to go ahead and try and pay off that home early if we can. And I know that's going to be a little less advantageous for those of us who have really low interest rates because they got the low interest rates during COVID. And I know there's some family friends of mine who have something crazy like 2 point something interest rates, and they're probably never going to want to pay that off early because they could simply go out and buy a bond and it's essentially free money that they're getting with that. So that's one of those cases where maybe they're not going to be paying off their home early, but for a lot of us now, especially that are in higher interest rate environments and our mortgages are much, much higher in the 7% range, that's something where we definitely are going to want to be paying that off early if we can. The final thing is obviously going to be building our wealth and giving back, because giving back is something that's really, really important. We talked about being able to give to your children and how I would be incredibly happy if I was able to give them some of these gold and silver coins in the future, but also giving back to your community and having a way to help others around you, because your finances are not just about you and not just about your family, but you need to make sure that you're making a difference in the world and making sure that you are finding the highest and best use for the money that you've earned. Sometimes that's going to be simply putting it on the sidelines in gold and silver. Sometimes that's going to be investing it in stocks. A lot of times it's going to be investing it in businesses and companies that you believe in. And sometimes it's going to be giving back to charity, because there is a lot of people out there in the world that are less fortunate than us and need us to actually give back to them so that they can have a nice standard of living. So those are the 7 baby steps. I know that I did a lot of side tangents and a lot of asides because I don't agree with everything, but I do agree with the premise that there should be a order of things when you are getting into actually investing and getting into taking control of your personal finances. There should be this general order that you do follow as you are taking control and getting out of debt for you, because it's something that's really important for us to take control of our finances and make sure that we are getting out of that debt and not being a slave to the lender. I hope that each and every one of you has found value in this video, and if you did, I invite you to join us on this gold and silver investing journey here on the Tactical Timmy YouTube channel. And if you like this video, feel free to leave a like down below and a comment. I really do enjoy hearing from you about what your opinions are on these topics, because there are different things, and my opinions have actually evolved on the baby steps over the years. When I first read Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover back in the day, I was almost a Dave Ramsey absolutist back in the day, and I thought that that was the only way that you could get out of debt and the only way that you should be investing. And over the years, I learned that there's room for gold and silver, there's room for actually index funds as opposed to Dave Ramsey's traditionally recommended mutual funds, and I found that there are differences and things that I didn't necessarily agree with, and I'd love to hear from you down in the comment section below about what your opinions are. I hope each and every one of you takes care.